Welcome back to another Create Mod tutorial. In this one, we are going to be going over an XP farm that gets you a stupid amount of XP. I think the numbers are level 30 in 15 seconds. And if you count in millibuckets, 170,000 millibuckets, which is, I think, level 250 in 1 hour. And this is the farm that we're looking at. It uses something that I didn't know really existed until one of the beautiful people in my comment section talked about it. It uses silverfish because in the Create Mod, and I'll go over this while we go over the details of the farm, you can turn a cobblestone generator into an infested stone generator into a silverfish farm. You can see it working now. It basically just places in a bunch of infested stone blocks, breaks it immediately, a bunch of silverfish spawn, get plopped into a thing, and get murdered by a sword. We have two different farms here that are almost fully identical, except for this one on the left is using an addition that is called Create Enchantment Industry. And this thing lets you farm experience. Whoa, why'd I say it like that? And this thing lets you farm experience orbs, which are the things you see coming out of there every once in a while, drops it into a disenchanter and places it in a fluid tank for you. Obviously, if you're not using that mod, you'll have to find a different way to kill them, whether it be manually or not. It really is really fast. And the deployer there is killing it with a sword that just has sharpness 5, sweeping edge, and unbreaking. And it only has to be diamond for this to work at full speed, so you don't need to worry about getting netherite. And if you don't have that mod, you can just do it manually or do something else fun with a different mod pack if you're playing like a larger mod pack or something like that. The schematics for them will both be in the description down below, and I'm going to be building this one, but you could just stop at the killing portion if you are following along in the tutorial and build this one and add your own killing station later. So to talk about how this farm works and its stress units, as you can see, it uses just over 22,000 stress units. We have gone up from 22% at the start of this video to 37%. A crazy amount of XP can be stored in here, and it goes up really fast. The farm works starting with this cobblestone generator that only works in version 0.5.1.f and later, and this thing is kind of cool. We have two fluid containers containing 1 bucket of lava each. These mechanical pumps push the lava through. The water that is waterlogging these mechanical pumps also goes through. It generates cobblestone in the 1 tick that it takes for these trapdoors to move over a block. And as soon as they get to this block, it breaks the cobblestone and the cycle continues. It gets picked up and put into this item vault, which then gets dropped down, gets cooked into stone, placed into this barrel here, and then over on this side gets dropped out, cooked into infested stone, picked up, brought up all the way along this smart chute tunnel thing, all the way up to here, put on this depot, placed on these belts, and onto these belts here, which go into deployers. The deployers place down all of the infested stone blocks and break them in a pretty much identical way to these trapdoors and smooth stone andesite funnel things there. The only difference is that we're using chains, as you can see, instead of andesite funnels, because when the chains break the infested stone blocks, silverfish spawn, and they need to be able to fall through quickly so that these deployers can place another set of blocks. Once the silverfish are spawned, they get brought down into this little killing chamber here, where we have a deployer killing them with a sword. The XP drops out of the deployer onto this disenchanter and placed in the fluid tank, which is technically not part of the build, but I'll show you how to put the disenchanter down if you are using the Create Enchantment Industries. On this side of the farm, we are just using lava right now to kill them, but obviously you would have a chute where you can stand as a player and kill them with a sword manually. The dimensions of this farm are pretty simple. It is 8 blocks deep by 8 blocks wide by 10 blocks tall, and that includes the killing chamber for this section, but obviously if you're not using a deployer, it'll probably be a little bit longer down. And again, this is only usable in the newest version of the Create mod 0.5.1.f as of recording this. It will probably work in future versions as well. Nothing is set to change to make this break. To compare this to other Create mod XP farms, I have a Create mod XP farm in my survival world where I have a series. It is using 4 spawners, or maybe 5, 3 blaze spawners, a skeleton spawner, and a zombie spawner. That thing produces maybe 10% of the XP per second that this thing does. Even if you're in the early game, you can build half of this now, and it will be faster than any other XP farm that you can make at this time. For late game, it's just crazy. It's really good for making hyper experience, which is a 10 to 1 from normal experience to hyper experience. It'll help you get to that goal of a bajillion hyper experience, and it's honestly in a pretty small footprint, all things considered. For the people using the schematic, I'm going to be going over what to do and how to place it in just quickly here. For everyone else, I'm going to put a timestamp on the screen now for the block by block tutorial, and again, the schematics are going to be in the description of this video. So when you place in the schematic, I'm doing this in creative, obviously. First, you're going to need to remove and replace these fluid tanks and the item vault so that they don't look silly and look normal. So like right here, I don't know why this happens when you place in a schematic, but if you really break that one block and it looks like a full 4x2x2 item vault, you should be pretty good. And then obviously if you're using the deployer killy mode, you're going to need to put in a diamond sharpness 5, sweeping edge 3, unbreaking 3 sword into here. Mending will not work, unfortunately, but make sure you put a diamond sword in here. And if for some reason the filter isn't set, make sure you set the filter there for that diamond sword that you place in it. Otherwise, it'll just drop it out and throw it on the floor here, which you don't want. Next, we need to add a couple of things to this cobblestone generator here. So we're going to flick down these trapdoors here, and we're going to need to fill in all of these with water. If you just go along like this, you will then see that even the ones in the back here get filled in because the water will just flow there. So you only need to fill in these outside ones, and then you should just be able to check over here and make sure that these are all filled in. And if they aren't, just throw water in there and then you should be good. The next thing we have to do is put lava into these fluid tanks. In survival, you can't just right click on it with a lava bucket. So instead, we're going to need to bring a fluid pipe here, bring this all the way down, have a mechanical pipe going into it like this. Obviously connect it to some sort of power quickly. And then right here, we're going to place a basin and put a lava bucket in there. We should then see if this speeds up, that the lava empties and goes straight into this fluid container here. And if you hover over it with your engineering goggles on, you'll see that you have 1,000 millibuckets of lava in here. And then you'll just have to do the same thing again by breaking this, moving it over, and putting it into the other fluid tank. Then you can break these and then you're good. You'll also notice that the dimensions are a little bit annoying on this side since we have a full block needed just for these trapdoors. You can always push this up against a wall and remove these trapdoors if you have a like flush wall there. So you don't need these trapdoors necessarily. They're just to prevent water from flowing out like this because that gets annoying. Then you're gonna want to grab glue and just make sure everything is glued together. This should be a one big box here from this glass block all the way to this other corner right here. It should be a big old cube like this that glues all these glass blocks and the chains and trapdoors together. You're going to also want to check here that this thing is glued together with these spruce trapdoors and andesite funnels. And finally, that this 3x2 section of gantry carriage, linear chassis, funnel, and barrel are glued together as well. And then obviously, if you build this next to something, don't have any blocks here or here, because that will also break it. Now we can just check to see if this thing actually turns on. You should just be able to connect any power source to it. Cobblestone should start generating. Apologies, because you don't have to do this in creative. You'll have to place a lava bucket here. That should be cooking, bringing stone over to here. This infested stone should be haunted by this soul campfire there. And then when it is haunted, this belt should start bringing stuff up here and putting them onto these belts. In a second, we should see that these are successfully placing infested stone and that the stone is being broken immediately. There we go. And we already see that silverfish are spawning. If you're doing this and you don't have a killing chamber or you haven't placed the sword in, you're toast, I guess. Definitely put the sword in or the killing chamber before you turn on the farm, which I guess was an oversight. I should have told you to do that first, but you live and you learn. Another thing I forgot to mention for the schematic users is that depending on which orientation you place this, you're going to need to change these rotation speed controllers to a different direction. If these belts are spinning in the opposite direction, so they're going left, just change this 256 one from clockwise to counterclockwise, and that will fix your issue. The same thing is true for if all the fans are spinning backwards or anything like that. So that's all that you need to do for the schematic. When you turn off the farm, there will still be silverfish in this main bit, but they shouldn't be able to get out and they'll just wander and make noise. So now that everything for the schematic is done, we can get on to the block by block tutorial. As I already mentioned, you're going to need an 8x8x10 blocks tall area, and we are going to be building the one that kills it with the deployer. Obviously, if you don't have the Create Enchantment Industries, you don't have to do that. You can do something else. And the wiring is almost basically the same, and you can make it the exact same if you want. or you can simplify it just by putting a bunch of encased chain drives here and making the fan spin the right way. We're going to start in the back right-hand corner here, where we're going to place our first rotation speed controller, large cogwheel in the front, and a clutch to the left of that. We're going to set this rotation speed controller to 256 RPM clockwise for now. If everything's backwards at the end, you'll just need to switch this to counterclockwise, but we'll do that when the time comes. Then we can place a shaft, one right next to it, connected with a belt, and then we're going to come around the back here and place an encased chain drive, 2, if it'll let me. Please, thank you. 2 just like this. And then over on the front here, we're going to place a gearbox, a vertical gearbox, and then another gearbox. We're going to place an encased fan on top of the vertical gearbox that we placed in the middle. And then over on this right-hand side, we're going to place another gearbox connected to this one, and then an encased chain drive. We're going to need 7 of these in total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So you should have something that looks like this. Then we're going to grab more gearboxes and place 3 in a row right along the front right-hand side here, and it should line up to 1 block before the ending bit of our area here. And then on the other side of this encased chain drive at the top, we're going to place another gearbox just like this. We're then going to place in the smelting and converting into infested stone system. So what we're going to do is we're going to place a brass funnel going onto this belt here. Directly underneath it, we're going to place 2 blocks like this, a barrel right next to the belt, with a brass funnel coming out of it onto this block again. We're then going to place 2 more blocks here with a brass funnel, again going into the barrel here. We're going to have our lava on this block eventually, but not yet. And then we're going to place a block here, and we're going to have our campfire here. And this needs to be a soul campfire, of course. We're going to place that in, and this will be used to haunt the stone into infested stone to convert it into the things that spawn silverfish. Now, directly behind this soul campfire, we're going to place an encased fan facing towards the soul campfire. And then directly to the left of it, we're going to place another encased fan. The lava is obviously going to be right here. I wouldn't place this in until the very end, just in case we need to break blocks in the future. And if you have lava here, block breaks and it falls in lava, then you don't have a block, and that's sad. So we'll put that in at the very end. We're then going to place in a smart chute directly on top of this brass funnel that is eventually going to go right next to the lava. And then we're going to place an item vault on top of it. It's going to be a 2x2 item vault here that is facing out backwards towards this clutch and where we're going to power this whole thing. And this thing's going to be 4 blocks long in total, 1 on the side with the barrel, and then 2 more on the sides with the encased fans. So it should finish on the encased fan and then also end on the barrel on the other side here. Over on this side, we're going to grab the rest of our smart chutes and place them on top of the encased fan, going all the way up to 1 block above this encased chain drive. And then we're going to top it off with a depot so that the items will go up here onto the depot and then drop out onto the belt and feed all of the deployers. We can then get started on the item collection bit of the Cobblestone Generator. So we're going to place a bunch of andesite funnels on top of this item vault going into them. So you'll just shift click all of those if you're facing above them. And then we're going to need 2 temporary blocks and then 2 more andesite funnels over on the side with the barrel so that it's over the edge here of this item vault and kind of going into nowhere. Then we're going to do the same thing with the spruce trapdoors on top. So you're going to need to place a temporary block or something just so that you can get on the top half of this block. And then we're going to place in trapdoors on top of every block where the andesite funnels are. So it's going to be 10 in total, and it should look something like this. We're then going to get in the bit that moves this thing back and forth. On this left side here, with the andesite funnel directly in line with the item vault, we're going to place a linear chassis and then 1 block gap and another linear chassis right next to it. We're actually going to need to break this andesite funnel and place any temporary block that we can have a brass funnel coming out of whatever temporary block this is and dropping it down below here. You can then break that and replace it with an andesite funnel. We can then place in a barrel on top of the brass funnel there, and then we're going to need to get in our gantry shafts. So we're going to need 1 directly on top of the barrel here, and then another one on the right-hand side of it. We're then going to need to shift click and place another one so that they aren't connected. You can then extend that by 1 block, so you should have 2 gantry shafts that are connected, a gap here, and then 2 more that are connected. We can then place in our gantry carriages, 2 facing downwards to connect to the linear chassis, and it should look something like this, where you have a 3x2 area that are connected to the gantry shafts on the right-hand side. This is because when this whole system moves over by one block, these two gantry carriages will scooch over to this block and this block. These spruce trapdoors and andesite funnels will go over to here, and then these ones will be flush in line with the item vault so that all the cobblestone that is generated is broken every second. We're then going to need to get some glue in. So you're going to glue both sides of both linear chassis here, and then you're going to grab a wrench and hover over the linear chassis, right click it with the wrench, and you should be able to change this number. If you drop it down to 1, that's what you want. So again, hover over the number, right click with a wrench, and drop it down to 1. We can then glue this gantry carriage bit together. So if you right click on the side of the linear chassis, bring it over to the top of the gantry carriage, you should have a 2x3 section here. And then we're going to glue this andesite funnel with this corner spruce trapdoor, so you have a big box of andesite funnels and trapdoors. Next, we can move on to the water and lava bits of this. So we're going to place in 8 mechanical pumps, all on top of the item vault and trapdoor section. So we're leaving these two empty. And then we're going to place in 4 fluid tanks, so they form a 2x2, and then 4 more here, so they form 2 separate 2x2 fluid tanks. Then we're going to need to get lava into these fluid tanks. In survival, you can't just right click it with a lava bucket. So instead, we're going to need to grab a pipe, bring it down to the ground, grab a mechanical pump going upward, a basin, connect the mechanical pump in the basin, and then connect the mechanical pump to power. I'm just going to use a creative motor, but you'll obviously have to use real power. Then we can right click the basin with a lava bucket, and you should see all the lava empty out and go straight into this fluid tank. Once you've done one of those, we can just move that over to the other fluid tank, fill it up again, and then this fluid tank is now full, and you can remove these temporary filling bits, and you should have 1 bucket of lava in each fluid tank. That's all you need for this farm. Next, we're going to get the water in, but first, so that the water doesn't flow everywhere, we're going to need to place a bunch of framed glass trapdoors around. And then it's also probably a good idea to fill in these blocks so that water doesn't just fall out this way. So we're going to place a normal cogwheel directly next to the mechanical pump here on this outside corner, a vertical gearbox here, and then we're going to need to do a little snaking system with vertical gearboxes here. So next to the gearbox that we placed on this side of the encased chain drive, we're going to place a vertical gearbox heading upward, connecting to the gearbox, and then obviously upward, another vertical gearbox here to connect that gearbox with this one, and then another one sideways that connects this gearbox here to eventually some shafts that we're going to run this way. We're then going to need to place another vertical gearbox here that is not connected to this one here. So it should be on a line of its own going this way. And then on the edge of this gearbox here, we're going to place a rotation speed controller, set it to 8 in counterclockwise or clockwise. It doesn't matter at all. We're going to place a large cogwheel on top so that it links together. And then we're going to grab an encased chain drive and place them 2 on top of each other so that they connect up with this gearbox here. On this side here, we're going to place a rotation speed controller next to this gantry shaft with a large cogwheel on top. We're going to set this to 170 clockwise or counterclockwise, it doesn't matter. And then that fills in the whole area around the mechanical pumps so no water should spill out. You can then right click in 5 buckets of water. That should fill up every single one of these. You can check the ones behind. They should just be filled with water, and then you can close up these trapdoors or whatever blocks you're substituting because they're just to keep the water in. We're then going to just need to place in a couple of shafts. So we're going to go from this gearbox here, the vertical one where we had to snake all the way up here. We're just going to go over 2 blocks. We're going to place a shaft here against this large cogwheel as well. Shaft here against this depot. And then we're going to bring that all the way along to the end of these gearboxes here. And then over on the right hand side here, we're going to place a shaft connected to this gearbox. We're going to go all the way down the line until the last gearbox and then over one. So the second to last gearbox, I suppose. And then we're going to place a depot on the end just like that. We can then connect this with a belt just like this. We can then also set up some more shafts. So we're going to place a temporary block there and have a 1 block gap between this shaft, the end one here, and then the one connected to the rotation speed controller. We can connect this shaft all the way on the right hand side to this one that we just placed. And you should have shaft, gap block, shaft, 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 and then end. We can then bring this shaft 2 more blocks and connect these with shafts. Wait, belts, not shafts. And then on the end here, we're going to just place depots all the way along, just like that. We're then going to come over to the front here and set up the Silverfish Collection pushy whatever system. So we're going to go up here to the left middle block. It's a 2-block gap. I'm so sorry. It's not symmetrical. We're going to place down a temporary block and then a permanent block here that's going to prevent silverfish from coming out of this little gap here, because sometimes that happens. I don't know why. And then on the other side here, as you saw, we're going to place a shaft, another one directly next to it. We're going to connect these two with a belt. And then on the end of this belt, down 1 block, we're going to place a block here that will eventually house the silverfish. If you're building the auto killing system, then that will be permanent. Otherwise, you'll have to just dig a hole and have your manual killing system just a little bit lower. Now we're going to get in the belts that push all the silverfish into this killing system in this little belt here. So we're going to place a temporary block on the edge of this belt, a shaft, and then another temporary block and a shaft 1 block away here. And again, that's on the left-hand side, where we have a 3-block distance, where on the right we have 4. On the right, we're going to place another temporary block, shaft, and then we're going to need to extend this belt 2 blocks so that it goes all the way to the edge, just like this. We're then going to come to the other side here. We're going to place 2 shafts like this on the right-hand side with a 3-wide gap. And then over here, we're going to place 2 shafts, 1 shaft over on this far one, another one like this, and then 1 connected to it like that. Connecting to this encased chain drive, we're going to place a gearbox that inverts the spinny signal so that it actually spins the right way, and then we can connect everything with a belt, including this other side here. We're then going to connect up this belt with this one, so we're going to place in a gearbox on the edge of this shaft here, on this, I guess, middle side. That's not really a side in the words of English, but whatever. We're going to do the same thing on this side here. And then we're going to place another gearbox in the center. This one can be vertical and connect them. It doesn't matter, but I like it vertical. I think it looks just like a millimeter better. And then we're going to need to connect this belt here to power. So we're going to build a shaft along this right-hand side like this, a shaft here connecting to this encased chain drive, and then a gearbox that I accidentally placed here. So you can remove this one and place it there. So this should go gearbox straight over to this belt here. But as I mentioned previously, that this block is here to prevent silverfish from flying out the sides. They can also fly out in this little gap here. So we're going to need to right-click this shaft with an andesite casing. This will make it so that the silverfish can't fly out. If you don't do this, you're going to have silverfish everywhere, so make sure you put this andesite casing around the shaft. Right next to it, we're going to place a permanent block here. On this other side, we're going to do the same thing. Permanent block, shaft, andesite casing. Boom. This next part is a little bit different depending on what you want to do. If you want to use lava, you'll have to use a non-flammable trapdoor because lava burns trapdoors. But if not, we're going to need to get underneath here. I guess going around this side is probably better. Yes. And then we're going to place a trapdoor on the bottom of this gearbox here so that when you flap it down, it makes a little wall block here, but still lets this encased fan blow haunting smoke over here. Another thing, while explaining that, I forgot to set filters to these brass funnels. So it's probably good that we do that now. You're going to need to grab at least 1 infested stone block and set that as a filter here. You can do that just by throwing stone in front of a fan with a soul campfire in front of it, which is super easy to do in the create mod because like that's the whole point. And then over here to this brass funnel, you're going to set this one to normal stone so that when cobblestone drops down, normal stone goes into the barrel and then drops out, gets turned into infested stone. Over here, we're also going to need to grab another brass funnel and place it going into that smart chute from this belt. And then we're going to place a permanent block here on top of this gearbox, just so that the items don't fly away into oblivion. And then over on this side again, we're going to need to place in a couple of permanent blocks to prevent silverfish from flying away. You can do that on that side or over on this side here. We're going to need a bunch of permanent blocks anyway. So up until this gantry carriage area, we're going to be placing in blocks like that up until the rotation speed controller. But underneath here, we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to need 2 andesite funnels going into the item vault here, 2 blocks below them, and then a little block thingy right here that does not get in the way of this linear chassis, because again, it's going to need to move over to this set of blocks, and if there's a block there, it won't. Now comes the slightly difficult part of getting in the killing system. This is only for if you're using the automated killing system where the deployer can kill stuff and get XP for you. That is a Create Enchantment Industry mod specific thing, so make sure you have that installed. If you don't have it installed, you'll need to kill this silverfish manually, and that's still really fast, so you could just do that. And if you are doing that, just dig a hole down there, block off this bit so that silverfish can't get in, and then they'll just fall through here, and then you can set up a killing chamber down there. If you're not doing that though, we're going to place in this block here, and then let's get to the killing system. And obviously for the people that aren't using it, just look in the chapters in the video description or on the video itself to just scoot by this part. It won't take too long, so just hold your horses, I suppose. Over on the left-hand side here, we're going to throw in a deployer right next to this encased fan so that it is 1 block away from the block where the silverfish are going to be. And then you're going to need to grab your enchanted diamond sword with sharpness, sweeping edge, and unbreaking. All of those, the max level is preferred. You obviously don't need unbreaking, but it is super recommended. And then we're going to place that in the filter first, and then in the hand of the deployer over on the side here. If you just right click it, it'll be there. But then we need to switch this to attack mode. If you right click on the deployer's hand with a wrench, it will switch it to attack mode, with the sword being all pointy. And then in front of the deployer, we're just going to need to place a glass block. And I'm going to put one under there just because I'm afraid of silverfish running away, but I don't think they should. This glass block just prevents silverfish from piling out, and for some reason, the deployer can only hit stuff 1 block away. We're then going to come over to this side here. We need to break one of these shafts to get in here, but that's fine. We're then going to place a block here next to this andesite encased shaft so that silverfish have nowhere to go in this little area. And then we're obviously going to need to replace that shaft. For the item collection, we're going to place a brass funnel coming out, coming out of the deployer there. This will, when the deployer kills a bunch of silverfish, it'll get a bunch of XP orbs and throw it out from the brass funnel, which we can then get a belt, have it go over like a block. We can do 2 if we want, which will then go into a disenchanter just right here. And then since we are doing the killing system instead, you're actually going to need to break this andesite encased shaft and replace it with 2 encased chain drives, just like this. We're going to place a gearbox here that goes into this belt, which will actually need a shaft in the center there so that it actually spins. We can obviously place it in the disenchanter. And then we're going to need 1 more gearbox on top so that it connects into the deployer there. Before you go any further, I made a mistake. I would remove that gearbox that connects to the belt and replace it with a shaft. The encased fans and that belt that we just connected are spinning the wrong way by default, so replace it with a shaft and that'll make it work. Then over on this backhand side, we're going to place in an encased chain drive that connects to this belt, and then 2 more encased chain drives here that connects this encased chain drive to the encased fan, and then the same thing again, so that we have 2 of those right next to each other. We can then place in the spawning area for these silverfish. So we're going to place in permanent blocks all the way along the edges of these belts here. And I would recommend doing there. It probably isn't necessary, but I always like to do it because silverfish are annoying to kill if they escape. And then you can continue with that same building block, but I'm going to use glass because I think it's cool to watch the guys die. And we're just going to place in a 3 block tall area there that goes up until this gearbox point. And then over on each side, we're going to place a wall of glass on top of the last fringe edge of belts like this. And then we're going to place in a 2 tall row of glass that is connected to this linear chassis here, and then another one on this edge side here. And now's a good time to place in the deployers and stuff because we won't have the chance to. We're going to place in a bunch of chutes here, and then underneath them, place in deployers facing downwards in use mode. They all need to be facing the same way, with the item filter facing out towards you if you are looking at it from the front. I would also set these filters to infested stone. You don't really have to, but if any other items get in here, they might be placed and mess up some stuff in here. It won't be too drastic. It'll just be like a shaft is flinging between these 2 belts or something like that. So it's really not the end of the world, but I just like to do it. And then we're going to do the same thing with the next row. So if you just right click all the way along, fill the filter with infested stone, and then 1 more time, So we have a 3 by, how many is this? 6 wide, all with the filter of infested stone, all in use mode and all facing towards these gearboxes on the end here. We can then place in the remaining chutes that just go along like this and are directly under these belts. And you should have a system that looks like this. And I blocked in the bit that we weren't done with, so you're going to have to break some glass temporarily. Oops. On the inside here, we're then going to place the bits that actually break everything that's important. I guess that's infested stone, so it's not super important, but we're going to need to place in iron trapdoors, or any trapdoor that can't be flicked by a person, which is, I think, just iron. I don't know any others. And we're going to build this all the way along here, up until 1 block before this linear chassis here, because that's where the glass is going, just like that. We can then place in the chains. You should just be able to click on the trapdoors each, and they should be in the right orientation, but if not, make sure they are all facing vertically up and down. We can then replace in that glass, and there we go. That system is 99% done. We need to glue it. If you right click on this glass pane here and then come all the way around and do this top left one, I guess, from the way I'm looking at it, it will create a big box of everything that's going to be moving around there. And then this linear chassis again should be at 1, so it connects to the andesite funnel and the white stained glass over here. These sides of the linear chassis should be glued as well. I forgot one edge of this circuit here, so we're going to need to place in 3 more deployers on the edge of this white stained glass here. And of course, set the filter to infested stone and then chutes above them like that. There we go. So now the depot is the last bit where the deployers go. And now I think we can get everything else in. I am leaving the funnels off of this for now, so that we can test to make sure that everything is working to the best of its ability. If something breaks, you don't want a bunch of silverfish in here hitting you while you try to fix it. So over on the back here, we're going to throw in our lava. Just place a non-flammable block here so that we can place in lava and it doesn't start burning a billion things. And then we're going to need to hook up this clutch to power. You can have just a lever on this clutch, or if you want, the schematics come with a redstone link. So I'm going to do a redstone link here, set to receive mode, of course, with a lever in the red, and let's just do lava in the blue, because I'm already doing that over there. Let's change it, a lever and a shaft. There we go. And then again, out in the front here, lever, shaft, lever there, power that bad boy on. This clutch should be on, and if we connect it to power, it won't turn just yet. When we connect this thing to power, it should all work and all start moving. Make sure everything is glued properly because it is a little bit annoying to fix. And over on this side, if you have glass available and you're looking through this, make sure that there's no air gaps anywhere for silverfish to run away from. Sometimes if you forget one of these back blocks, smooth zone, they could run away from there. But I look to be pretty good. So I'm going to turn this on and then we'll walk through what could go wrong. So first of all, you should see that the gantry shaft is moving back and forth quickly. You should also see that cobblestone is being generated with water coming down and also lava coming down. You can see those lava particles. You want the lava particles there. Then down here, the cobblestone should be turned into stone. We don't really see it from the barrel area, but we can see it here that there is stone coming out. And then we need to make sure that infested stone is coming in. We can look all the way at the top here. Eventually, this depot should have infested stone on it. Oh, actually, we just hit our first roadblock. You remember how I said this one is going to matter if we're doing it the right way? Ooh, this also means that this is on the wrong side, but we can fix that in a second. We need to switch this rotation speed controller to go forward, not backwards. So once you do that, this will break stuff, which means our fans are just spinning the wrong way, along with this under stuff here. So I think if we just replace that gearbox with a shaft, everything should start spinning the right way. And I guess that was an oversight on my part, but it should all work. We should have infested stone on this belt. There should be infested stone up top on the depot here, which means that this fan is spinning the correct way and that these are all spinning the right way as well. So if these are spinning backwards, just replace this gearbox here with a shaft and that'll fix it. Wonderful. So up at the top here, this thing's working. Let's make sure that this moving back and forth system is working. It should be, since we're generating cobblestone, but if it isn't, there are a couple of things to worry about. First of all, make sure that you're in the right create mod version. Next, make sure that these linear chassis are only one block for both of them, because if they're not, they'll try to move these white stained glass blocks and then it'll just break. And third of all, make sure there aren't any blocks blocking it. Like if there was a block right here, that would prevent this thing from moving at all. And the same thing is true for over here if it's not glued together properly. So once we've gotten all that, I think we should be able to turn this thing off and put in the final funnels that turn this thing on and start silverfish spawning. So first we're going to place a funnel coming out of the depot onto this belt here, and then 3 more funnels going from this belt onto these 3 separate belts this way. We can now try to turn it on. So once we do that, we should get silverfish spawning, XP in the thingy, and this thing is gonna be full really quickly. So I am waiting, but as you can see, we have silverfish in here and they cannot escape, which is really what we care about. And that's the farm. Honestly, not too difficult to build. The schematic, obviously easier because that's what schematics are for, but if you wanted to build it or rebuild it because the schematic's stupid, which is also so true with schematics, the block by block tutorial wasn't too bad. It is mostly just 2 systems: place block, break block, and spawn block, break block, and then move block. And that's really it. As I mentioned, you obviously don't need this killing system. If you want, you can, I guess, put lava. You won't get any XP. Or you can do a manual killing system, which will get you XP. And yeah, I suppose that's all. So thank you all so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like. And if you made it this far and you like the content, I have a bunch of other tutorials. I have a bunch of series. I actually only have 1 right now, but I'll have a bunch. So subscribe if you like it. All right, I'll see you all next time. Peace.